Hey, welcome everyone. My name is Mika Anderson, and today I'm with Ben Wilson, and we are talking about Modernization Toolkit and the recent advancements in this area. Before we jump into the today's agenda and the actual presentation, let's start briefly with the housekeeping stuff. So, if you have any questions during the session, please feel free to ask using the box there to enter your questions, and we will address those questions after the webinar during the questions and answers section. And as always, if you have any questions or thoughts that you'd like to share after the webinar, please feel free to join the conversation on our forum. And as usual, we will send out the presentation as well as the recording to this webinar roughly around in 2 hours from the end of this webinar. But without further ado, let's kick it off. Ben, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you, Mika. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this webinar about what's new with Modernization Toolkit in Vaadin 24.7. So I'm Ben Wilson. I'm Modernization Director at Vaadin and responsible for the Modernization Toolkit product, which is also called MTK for short, much easier to pronounce. MTK is a product family that contains the Dragonfly transpiler, the feature pack, and the free analyzer. Vaadin 24.7, the platform, came out almost 2 months ago on March 19th. MTK had a release at the same time, and since March 19th, there's been a lot of developer testing, lots of additions, lots of fixes, and today MTK is at version 2.12. MTK is at version 24.7.4. So MTK 24.7 had a big emphasis on adding Vaadin 7 support into the latest flow. It also did that to a lesser extent for Vaadin 8. For those of you who have been in one of my presentations before, you know that I'm a fan of analogies. So it means that I like starting presentations by talking about something that doesn't seem related to the main topic at all, and we find out after a few minutes how it makes total sense. So I have an elaborate analogy for you today. It's about a video game that was released almost 20 years ago called The Elder Scrolls Oblivion. This is a game that was released in 2006, and last month they released a remastered version of it, Oblivion Remastered. There you go. You could say that Oblivion Remastered is a technical upgrade of the game, because what they did was really port the game from the engine that it was on to a modern game engine. Here's some screenshots. On the left, I've got captures from the original game of 2006, and on the right, I've got captures taken from the same in-game locations, but in the 2025 remaster. So every location, every building, every window, every door, and as you can see, every plate and every cup on every table, and outside, every barrel and crate on every pier, it's present just as in the original. And I think this really fits the definition of a modernization because it's a new game, but at the same time, it's an old game as well. So as I said, what they did was change the game engine. So they dropped the original engine of 2006, which was called Gamebryo, and in its place, they used the more modern Unreal Engine 5. So why am I mentioning this? Well, the reason I'm mentioning this is I think what they did with Oblivion Remastered is a useful analogy to what we at Vaadin did with Vaadin 7 in MTK. When the team was considering Vaadin 7 and MTK, we knew the gap between Vaadin 7 and Vaadin Flow was much wider than the gap between Vaadin 8 and Vaadin Flow, because we had done Vaadin 8 upgrade automation for a while and we had some experience with that. So if you have a text field in Vaadin 8, there's a good chance that you can replace that text field with a Vaadin Flow text field You can make some adjustments and get something that works. For a Vaadin 7 text field, though, you're going to need more than just a few adjustments, and this has everything to do with the way that Vaadin 7 handles data binding, data validation, and data conversion. We knew that the relationship between the components and the data binding was going to be very different between Vaadin 7 and Flow, and in some ways it was going to be the exact opposite in terms of the direction of control. So the solution is that we essentially built Vaadin 7 remastered, if you want to call it that. So if Oblivion remastered meant that every plate and every fork and every knife on every table was going to be placed exactly in the right position as it was in the original, then Vaadin 7 remastered for MTK would have to be every event, every superclass, every method of every component. We would need to reproduce that as well. And as for what's changed, if Oblivion remastered meant replacing Gamebryo by Unreal Engine 5, in MTK for Vaadin 7, we replaced GWT with web components and Flow. So with that introduction, in this webinar, we're going to dive deep into MTK 24.7.4. We'll do the introduction and the nice Oblivion analogy. So that's done, and we won't talk about Oblivion anymore. We will look beyond the developers and see why this technical upgrade is something that would be of interest to your stakeholders in general. We're going to look at some announcements and some helpful resources that are available online so that you can understand how you can use this. And then I will say a few words about what exactly that we mean when we're talking about Vaadin 7 and Vaadin 24, because there actually is some ambiguity there, especially with the different versions of the Vaadin platform that are supported and the different ways that you could use Vaadin 7 together with Vaadin 8. And then we'll have a nice long session where we do a deep dive into the API. So the next topic is, why should you care? Why should you care about upgrading Vaadin 7 applications to Flow? Is this something that your colleagues and business will benefit from, or is it just new graphics? And of course, the answer is absolutely yes, your colleagues and business can benefit quite a bit, and we will go into this topic next. The core message that I'd like to bring is that upgrading from Vaadin 7 to Flow is an exercise that will benefit your developers, your users, and your business. So we'll take developers first. As I talk to companies with Vaadin 7 and 8 applications, I often get the impression that the application stakeholders have this impression of Vaadin as being old technology. And that's really a shame, because Vaadin Flow is actually a very modern platform. It was made from scratch in 2018, and it's really on par with Angular and React when it comes to using today's web standards. So Vaadin 7 is not that. And there's many web standards that have come out since the Vaadin 7 days that Vaadin 7 isn't able to take advantage of. This is an issue for modern web developers who are looking into the maintenance of Vaadin 7 applications. They're not going to easily find the tools that they're looking for, whether it's Flex, Gap, CSS3, CSS Grid, HTML Popover. These are some examples. So these tools are part of modern web development, and they're also part of Flow. So upgrading Vaadin 7 applications is going to address this topic of transferable developer skills, especially on the website. But the next point is the developer experience. So it's not just the web standards gap that have changed since Vaadin 7, it's also Java. So Java's had a lot of new things added to it as well, like optionals and streams. And you do find optionals and streams in the Flow API. You don't find these in the Vaadin 7 API. So Java developers who are used to thinking in modern Java are going to be more fluent and more productive in the Vaadin Flow. There's more to this point about improved developer experience, and that's the ease of programmatic communication in Flow between the browser and the JavaScript side and the server Java side. In Vaadin 7, you kind of have to set up a lot of infrastructure involving connectors and adapters and widget sets. It's a bit more complicated, but in Flow, all of this stuff this falls away, and you can very easily and very dynamically and accidentally invoke Java from JavaScript, and you do that with client callables and also the other way around. So it's much better developer experience in that regard. Next, let's talk about, is it worth it for your users? And I've got 3 topics about that. The first thing that I would talk about would be performance. So Vaadin Flow is built on web components, and this is a W3C standard. And that's a big deal because browsers like Chrome, Firefox, and Safari are now natively optimized to work with web components. And this was only really just beginning back in the Vaadin 7 days. But in Vaadin 7, there wasn't web components, it was GWT components. And also browsers were a lot less similar than they are today. So GWT was a framework that browsers didn't natively understand, and a lot of things had to be handled with custom JavaScript in order to have a consistent experience across the different browsers. So today with Flow, you get web components and a better benefit of browsers having the same features. So you get faster rendering, you get smoother interactions, and you have fewer performance issues. And finally, because web components are formal web standards, of course, there's continuity. So we're not going to, or we're certainly not expecting to see another GWT situation where it turns into a project that stops getting a lot of community interest, and that is the community that is depending on keeping this technology moving forward. It's now part of the standard, so that's that. The next thing is accessibility, of course. So accessibility is a topic that web developers seem to be taking much more seriously than back in the Vaadin 7 days. Every year, Vaadin components that are used in Flow undergo a thorough external audit by a leading web accessibility agency named Tetralogical. That means the Flow UIs today, they meet rigorous accessibility specifications and requirements, including screen reader support, keyboard navigation, and more. You can find all the details about this on vaadin.com/accessibility. But the bottom line is that users with diverse needs are going to be much better supported with Flow components than with Vaadin 7 components. And then the third thing to talk about is collaboration. So users have come to expect modern business apps to be collaborative. So real-time updates, shared data, multi-user editing, that sort of thing. This kind of interaction is possible in Vaadin 7, but you're kind of reinventing the wheel yourself if you're trying to do this with push. Vaadin Flow, on the other hand, it comes with an entire kit for exactly this purpose. It's called the Collaboration Kit, and it's now free. Collaboration Kit includes features like real-time form updates, presence indicators, collaboration avatars, all handled over server push. So if you're building tools that need to support team workflows or live updates, moving to Flow is going to be an advantage. And then finally, the business. So I think many developers get nervous about trying to articulate the benefits of a technical upgrade to business. Well, if choosing to upgrade a large Vaadin 7 application, if this turns out to be a big decision for your organization, you might need to discuss that decision with management. And if you find yourself in that situation, well, here are some tips that hopefully you'll find helpful. So the first thing is, of course, compliance. Companies, they have to do many things, but one really obvious and basic thing they have to do is follow the rule of law. Management, understands this. If you are in a regulated industry like finance or healthcare or government, then you probably already have a culture of compliance awareness, and you know how important compliance is. There's a number of regulations that might be affecting your Vaadin 7 application, whether it's security themed like PCI DSS, or privacy related like GDPR, or accessibility related like Section 508, ADA, or EAA. Older development tools, especially if they're not supported, can become liabilities for applications. This is actually pretty topical. If you're in the EU, we've got the European Accessibility Act. And if you're specifically in Germany, we've got something called the Barrierefreiheitsstärkungsgesetz. And both of these are entering into effect next month on June 28th. So Vaadin Flow, not Vaadin 7, but Vaadin Flow is updated to comply with modern security and accessibility guidelines, and very frequently updated to stay that way. So by upgrading Vaadin 7 to Flow, even though it's a technical upgrade, you could be taking a big step towards reducing compliance risk. The next point is about agility and scalability. So I have the impression that developers tend to be turned off by these words because perhaps they get overused and not really explained in technical terms. But nowadays, there's so much being said about AI and innovation and how the world is moving so fast. So it's like, yes, the world is moving fast today, but yeah, we said the same thing 4 years ago, and we said the same thing 8 years ago, but we really mean it this time. The world is moving really fast. So the point I'd like to make is that it's going to be much easier to try new things, to experiment, and to integrate with new capabilities and new technologies in your application if you're not on Vaadin 7. If you upgrade to Flow, you've got a number of technologies that are just super simple to snap into your application, like web components, React and React components, Quarkus to support native deployments, and Kubernetes. So Vaadin 7 hasn't really been made with these things in mind, and it's much more complicated to change your existing application, to experiment with integrations with any of these. And then the last thing is valuation. So yeah, why not discuss that as well? So it might be a strange topic to discuss among developers, but it probably won't be strange for your management. So if you're a Java shop, you probably have a shareholder who is thinking about making an exit at some point. And whenever merger and acquisition talks get a bit more concrete, developer tools and using developer tools that are really old or 10 years old, this is going to stick out during due diligence, and not in a good way. So you have an application, and this application works, and it's a valuable asset, and that's good, but the value is going to be offset by whatever the technical debt is that's inside it, and the cost of removing that debt of modernization. So if you upgrade to Flow, you can get some of these red flags out of the way, and the value of this for business can absolutely be quantified. So thank you for indulging me here as I tried to explain some of the business reasons why doing a technical upgrade is useful, that there's much more to this upgrade than just a technical upgrade for the sake of it. Summary, your business, your users, and your developers should be benefiting from this upgrade if you complete it. All right, the next thing that we'll look at is the official announcements and resources about MTK and the feature pack. So the things I like to talk about are the release notes for the platform. I'll talk about the blog post for the platform, documentation on the Vaadin website, and in particular the API docs, and then Maven Central and the Sonatype Maven Index, and then the Eclipse Marketplace. So the briefest summary of MTK you'll find in the release notes of the platform. That's on GitHub. You'll see github.com, Vaadin platform releases, etc. for 24.7.0. You need to scroll down a bit, but it is mentioned there under modernization. So wider Vaadin 7 component and API support, including Vaadin 7 table, combo box and date fields, Vaadin 7 data binding, and over 100 classes, most frequently used in Vaadin 7 development. Next is there's a lot of information on the blog post. I mean, it's still a nice summary, but giving us a bit more detail. That's on vaadin.com/blog, and uh, the blog article by my colleague Mika, who's doing this with me today. So we see the breakdown in the concrete components and the abstract components, the utilities, and of course the data package and the data binding API. But to really get into the details of MTK 24.7, and especially the APIs, I think the API docs at vaadin.com/API, and then, yeah, you need to type the right one in. So com.vaadin/Vaadin-feature-pack-flow. This is the API doc website for MTK and the feature pack. So that's probably going to be the best way to understand that. Reading this documentation then is one way of understanding how Vaadin 7 works. But of course, if you want to know how the Vaadin 7 components in feature pack work, obviously one of the best resources is going to be the Vaadin 7 documentation that we have on our doc site. That should be valid, right? Things get a bit more challenging, though, when you're looking at the Vaadin 7 features and trying to figure out how these features can be made to work in a Flow application and how the feature pack makes that possible. So that's when these Java docs can become very helpful. They'll give you a glimpse into the way that the old and the new were brought together in each case in order to give the best results. It helps to look at these on a case-by-case basis because the way that we have approached one component might differ from another component. And I'll give some examples. So the first example I'll talk about is combo box. So the feature pack combo box extends the flow combo box because there's such a good correspondence between the old and the new combo box. And what we're doing in the extension is, yeah, we're making it possible to do the data binding according to the Vaadin 7 way. But if you take a look at this, what I'm showing now on the screen, this is the second example. That's going to be date field. So the best corresponding class to the Vaadin 7 date field in Flow is going to be date picker. But as you can see, F date field from the feature pack, it doesn't extend date picker. So it doesn't do the same thing that we do for combo box, but it extends a custom field that's typed to the older date. So the issue is the Flow date picker uses a local date instead of the older classic Java date class. So that's the most sensible way to map date field into Flow, is to create a custom field with a date and then add these features accordingly. And then a third example I'll give is table. Vaadin 7 table is a very rich component and it has lots of methods and features. So if you just look at it on the face of it, the best corresponding class for the Vaadin 7 table would be grid in Flow. Flow grid, unfortunately, Flow grid doesn't yet have a label. It doesn't implement that as label interface doesn't have a label, but Vaadin 7 table does. So we need something more in terms of the DOM structure in order to compose that. So the feature pack table component doesn't extend the Flow grid, but instead it's a composition of an optional label and our own internal subclass of the grid component. So you're going to get clues into all of this by looking at the API docs. It's probably very, very useful. The fourth example that I want to highlight is going to be the abstract components. So the Modernization Toolkit 24.7, we've got in the feature pack, we've got a lot of abstract components as well, interfaces and abstract classes. It's important to us that we don't just reproduce the components, but also the inheritance hierarchy. But that's difficult if we have a Flow component with a Flow inheritance hierarchy and a different Vaadin 7 inheritance hierarchy that we're trying to juggle at the same time. We found solutions in all places, but understanding what exactly we did there and how we were able to juggle this, these are things that you can find in the API docs. All right. The next resource to talk about is the Sonatype Maven index. That's just the way that you can find it. I mean, maybe you just remember Vaadin feature pack flow, but there's a good chance, I think, that you might forget that tomorrow and you're going to have to go search for it. This is one way that you can find it. So feature pack is in Maven Central. You can go search for it. In the Sonatype index, you've got the shortcuts for Maven and Gradle and a few other tools that you can use to manage your dependencies. Just one thing to bear in mind, be careful when you're searching, because there are a number of artifacts that have Vaadin feature pack in the name. The one you're looking for is Vaadin feature pack flow, not the BSD, not the GPL WCPE, and not the parent. So all of these are related, but the thing that you really need in your application is going to be the simple Vaadin feature pack flow. That's what you need. Okay, and then the last resource to talk about is the Eclipse Marketplace. Here you can search and download the Vaadin tools bundle. So yeah, it might be a bit small here, but it's Vaadin-tools. You go into Eclipse and then the Eclipse Marketplace, and you look for Vaadin-tools, and you'll find the Vaadin tools. There's a number of things that this package contains. You're only really interested in Dragonfly and perhaps the analyzer at this point. So don't be confused if you see a reference to Framework 7 here. You do not need this for MTK. This is all about the Vaadin Designer, which is slowly being replaced by the Copilot product, which has much more features. So Dragonfly is the component that has the one-click refactoring for your application. It will transform the code to use Flow and the feature pack. Okay, that was everything that I wanted to say about the resources that we have online that you can use. Next, I'll talk about this thing about what do we mean by Vaadin 7 and by Vaadin 24. Okay, so going back to Vaadin feature pack flow on the Sonatype site, the 24 question is really a point about the feature pack. So when MTK 24.7 was released, the idea obviously is that it would work with Vaadin 24.7, and it does. But the thing is about Vaadin 24 is that it does require Java 17, and we're talking to a lot of customers that are on Vaadin 8 and Vaadin 7, and many organizations on Vaadin 7 and 8, they're not ready for Java 17. Many migrations, many upgrades are happening to Vaadin 23 instead, so that they can use a lower version of Java. So at the time we released MTK 24.7, we did a simultaneous release of MTK for Vaadin 23. So if you look here in the Sonatype site, you'll see that there's different versions of feature pack that are available. Right now, that's 24.7.4 and 23.5.2. If you look at the 23.5.2 version, you'll see it's actually just from a month ago. It was updated last month. That was us adding the Vaadin 7 features in feature pack to be compatible with Vaadin 23. So we would always recommend to upgrade to the latest version of Flow, because the latest version has the core support for the browser standards of today. Vaadin 24 just has more features than Vaadin 23. If you upgrade to Vaadin 23 today, there will be situations where the feature pack is going to try to add Vaadin 24 features to Vaadin 23. And I'm thinking in particular about the HTML popover, but there's a number of situations like that where this simply wasn't standardized enough during the Vaadin 23 times in order to make that to make the cut for Vaadin 23, and it's Vaadin 24 instead. So it's not ideal. It's not ideal going to Vaadin 23. It's valid and it will work and it's legal, but it's not ideal. So if you absolutely need Vaadin 23, it is there, and that Vaadin 7 support is in there as well. It's an option you can consider. Okay, the other part of the question of what do we mean by Vaadin 7 and Vaadin 24 is, well, the Vaadin 7 part. So this part is really about Dragonfly. So if you see in your source code, com.vaadin.ui.text field, you know that it's a text field, obviously, and you know it's from a Vaadin 7 or 8, but you don't know if it's Vaadin 7 or Vaadin 8. And depending on if it's Vaadin 7 or Vaadin 8, this can be a very different object. This can be a very different class that has a very different behavior. So if it is a Vaadin 7 component, then as part of Modernization Toolkit, we're going to try to replace this with a feature pack text field. That's going to be F text field. If it's a Vaadin 8 situation, then the fact that Vaadin 8 data binding is very close to flow data binding, it means that we can probably get away with replacing the text field with a regular flow text field. Okay, but that's not all in the universe of Vaadin 7 and Vaadin 8. We also have the situation where you can have a Vaadin 8 application, or you could be migrating from Vaadin 7 to Vaadin 8, but you haven't quite completed the migration yet. And you have a Vaadin 8 application with a lot of Vaadin 7 APIs all throughout the source code. You have, it's called the compatibility package. In that case, if you have a Vaadin 8 application, you can still have Vaadin 7 text fields in there. And those Vaadin 7 text fields, they need to be treated the same way as a text field would be treated in a Vaadin 7 application. So this is very complicated. So if you just see the word text field, it can be very difficult to know, is this a Vaadin 7 text field that we're referring to, or is it a Vaadin 8 text field? And it would be really, really difficult if we needed to do this migration line by line and say, okay, well, this line is Vaadin 8. Okay, this line is Vaadin 7, so we'll do the conversion that way, and then this line is Vaadin 8. That would just be a nightmare. And yeah, obviously line by line, that would only be in extreme situations. Maybe you would be lucky and you would have just certain classes would be completely Vaadin 7, and some classes would be completely Vaadin 8, but still it can be a lot of work and very error prone. So we knew we needed to find a robust way of making this simple so that a Vaadin 7 text field in a Vaadin 7 application or a Vaadin 7 text field in a Vaadin 8 application, these could be treated the same way, and a Vaadin 8 text field in a Vaadin 8 application could be treated in a different way. So the way that we did this was we solved this in Dragonfly. We solved this in the refactoring tool that's going in and doing the refactoring of the source code. And what happens is when Dragonfly looks at the source code and it sees a reference or a name, and it goes and tries to resolve that name, and it's going to find out, okay, this is com.vaadin.ui.text field. But then what it's going to do is going to do a second resolving of what is the name of the jar in which this text field is declared. So we first know logically what is the name, then we know physically where is this declared, what is the name of the jar file, and we can then determine, is this a Vaadin 7 text field or is this a Vaadin 8 text field? Then, because Dragonfly has rules for both Vaadin 7 and for Vaadin 8, it's going to be, well, the way that Dragonfly keeps the rules is that it's tagging these rules with whether they're relevant for Vaadin 7 or whether they're relevant for Vaadin 8, and it's going to choose the right one accordingly. So if it knows this is declared in a Vaadin 7 jar, then we're going to take the rule that has the Vaadin 7 tag, and then we will apply it. And if it's a Vaadin 8 jar, then we'll use the Vaadin 8 rule. This is great. We have a few glitches with this that we're working out, but this is already working to a great degree. That means that you can take an entire application or even a workspace that has Vaadin 7 and Vaadin 8 mixed in a chaotic way and transform these with a single click. So you still have the transform Vaadin 7 or 8 to Vaadin available. That's option is still there. That would apply to the whole workspace. And you've got the transform selection Vaadin 7 or 8 to Vaadin, and that will then apply to whatever selection that you've made in the package explorer. So it's the package explorer. If you've got that open, you can select the files that you want to take over and then select or transform selectively. All right, that is what I wanted to share with you about the particulars of Vaadin 7 and like the ambiguity there between Vaadin 7 and Vaadin 8. One thing to highlight here is that this transformation in the Dragonfly transpiler, this is always going to go to Vaadin 24. There's no option here to go to Vaadin 23. If you actually need a transformation to Vaadin 23, then this is something that you would need to work with our consultants on to help give you a custom configuration so that just the Vaadin 23 target is selected. We expect that hopefully most people would be upgrading to the very latest version, and that is the default that we stuck in there. Okay, so now it's time to dive a little deeper into the API. So it should be clear as you're following this presentation that most of the effort went into the feature pack. In MTK 24.7, we've added over 100 classes to the feature pack, and that's actually more than doubling the number of Vaadin features that we had previously. So understanding what APIs have been added in the feature pack is the most important thing to understand about MTK 24.7. The Vaadin team saw that the Vaadin 7 classes could be grouped into certain categories, and we tried to come up with a general strategy for each of these categories. For the data binding classes, the strategy was to copy them. It seemed like a safe thing to do because these classes don't have any dependencies on UI classes. So these are pretty self-contained, and it was safe for us to copy them across. The second category is the UI components. And here, the default approach is to find the closest matching component and flow and subclass it. So we have a naming convention in the feature pack where we add the letter F to the beginning of a component if it clashes with an existing flow one. So we would have F checkbox and F combo box and F text field. But it's table. It's not F table because flow doesn't have a table component. And the last category is abstractions, the abstract classes. So in Vaadin 7, if you have an array list of abstract text fields, you can add to your array list a text field, a text area, and a date field. And if you want to be able to bring the same logic across to flow, then you really do need these abstraction layers as well. You would need abstract text field available in the feature pack, and it is. So we do have the entire inheritance hierarchy that you'll be finding in Vaadin 7. We've replicated that as good as possible in the feature pack. So which Vaadin 7 classes did we implement? Well, we don't have 100% coverage, of course, because Vaadin 7 is huge. But we were able to use data from the community applications to help us understand which components and APIs are being used the most. And right now we think Statistically speaking, we're at a point where most applications will get up to 70 or 80% coverage for the com.vaadin UI package and the com.vaadin.data package. The next version that's going to come out is going to be Vaadin 24.8 in June. There's going to be some more um, um, features added to MTK. So there's going to be a bump in that coverage then. So what we've got planned is that we're going to add the Vaadin 7 grid to MTK to the feature pack, and then a few layouts. So whatever coverage that you would measure today with the analyzer, it's probable that that will go even higher in a few weeks. So most of the classes from the Vaadin 7 data package are newly introduced with the key classes of item, property, and container. Item, property, and container, they're there. And then there's lots of classes that are related to that. Besides that, we have a large set of converters and validators and field groups, utils, and of course, abstract classes from the UI package that are relating to the data. So that's field and select, and F abstract field and F abstract select. Something that isn't quite ready yet for release, but we've been able to make work for a customer is lazy query container. So lazy query container is a directory add-on from 2016 by Tommi Laukanen that was very popular with Vaadin 7 developers. You could use it with the table component to lazily load large amounts of data. We actually got this lazy query container to work with feature pack for a customer who is upgrading from Vaadin 7 to Vaadin 24. So we can say it's definitely possible. We just need to figure out a way of packaging that because this is a community contribution. It goes on with the Vaadin 7 style actions and shortcuts, handling, and useful utilities from the server package. There's an emphasis on error handling and resources and reflect tools. So these errors, these are the different errors to validation errors. These are things like the printer's out of paper, or your disk is full, or the device not ready. These kind of errors that aren't related to input validation that of course are going to be handled by the data binding. And then this leaves us with components that you can interact with from the Vaadin 7 UI package. That's concrete components like text field and table, but also abstractions like custom component and custom field. On the side of concrete components, we've got components that have multiple values like table and combo box and twin call select. We have components that have a single value like checkbox and date field and text area. And then we've got components that have no value at all, like menu bar and menu item. So the core behavior and the most used APIs from these are also reproduced. Let's take a look at some of the more interesting ones. Combo box. Combo box is one with features like page length and filtering mode, but also multi-select, text input allowed, input prompts, item style generator, pop-up width, and scroll to selected item. And there's more. There's date field with features like resolution range and date format, and handle unparsable date string, and date out of range message, and lenient, show ISO week numbers, and time zone. Then we have menu items and the menu bar with features like separators and command and icon and checked and checkable and text. And finally, table, because it has lots of features as well, like headers, allowing users to hide or rearrange columns, tooltips for each cell called item description generators, and then sorting. We've got selectable, we've got visible columns, collapsed, collapsible, collapsing allowed, column reordering, and column width. There we go. So let's take a look at what are these in actions. Let's just take a look at table because it's such a complicated thing, and it's also so completely different from the Vaadin grid. Here is some sample code. This is flow code. This is what I'm showing here is a Vaadin flow application, but it's using the feature pack table component. And you see, for those of you who know the table component, you'll see the APIs are just exactly the same. So we have a bunch of puts here where we're creating our object. We create our table, the brightest stars as a label. The label appears here, just like it would in Vaadin 7. We add the different container properties to the table with the string class. And we add the items, and then we do a number of other things. We set the page length of 5, and that's the Vaadin 7 way of saying show 7 rows, which is actually happening here. We do the set item description generator, and here we have an item description generator that just does something very simple, like show Davis Sarah status OK, which is just a string constant that's shown here and just calculated from the data that was in the collection in the container. And then we set selectable trues that we can actually select this row here, and then we set with full and so on. So this is a flow application with a Vaadin 7 table functioning inside it. And yep, the idea is that yeah, it's very easy and intuitive for Vaadin 7 developers to work with that. Other things that are notable are lots of things that we have at the basic component level, things that affect all components. So that includes things like set data and get data for a number of components without having to use a separate utility call. And then obviously all the error messages that we can set with the different descriptions and component errors. So here we see there's a panel with a description and a component error. There's a component error here, and there's formatting. So we have content mode HTML formatting happening here, just like it was possible in Vaadin 7. And then here we have some more. There's some labels also with the different kinds of content modes. So we have predefined, pre-formatted, we have the HTML, and we have the text. We also have form layout. So form layout in Vaadin 7 had a very particular relationship with its components that it contained, especially when there was data binding involved. And these error messages are now reproduced. So once again, these are screenshots in Vaadin Flow of the Vaadin 7 MTK and using the feature pack. The captions, also formatted captions, also with icons, just like you were able to do in Vaadin 7. And here we're demonstrating that with some checkboxes. And we also have the different warning visual attributes. So the way that different warning errors were shown, warning and errors were shown with the different error levels, and how that would look differently on the screen, that is reproduced as well. All right, this takes us through the little demo. I think we're ready for some questions and answers.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first off, thanks, Ben, for the presentation. It was really awesome. And we indeed got some questions here for you. I tried to address some of the questions to my best extent, but obviously I had to leave some questions without an answer, since you're the expert in this area and know the right answers to these questions. So let's start with one question that we actually got a few times here. Are the MTK tools also available for IntelliJ?
Oh, well, the MTK, MTK is really three things. So MTK is the analyzer, it's Dragonfly, and it's the feature pack. So you can use the feature pack just like you would use any jar, and you could use this in any you can use this in any IDE. So there would not be a problem to do the future development in IntelliJ. The Dragonfly and the analyzer, these are Eclipse plugins. So in order to do the conversion, right, the refactoring, if you want to do the automated refactoring with Dragonfly, then you would probably use Eclipse to do that. Eclipse is just really handy because it lets you make a selection, and you can do this. I mean, you don't have to do everything at once. You can make a selection and just convert that one selection. But we don't have we don't have Dragonfly for or the analyzer for IntelliJ. That doesn't mean that you wouldn't be able to use MTK in order to modernize or upgrade to Vaadin 24, and that you would need to use Eclipse for the rest of your life. No, that's definitely not the case. So once you've completed the transformation, then you would be out of Eclipse if you wanted to be out of Eclipse. And you could continue on IntelliJ.
So for the analyzer, Maven plugin or Eclipse plugin, feature pack, you can use it whatever IDE or text editor, and rest is the actual transformation is with the Eclipse plugin. And once you're done with the migration, you can use whatever IDE you prefer.
That's right.
Cool, awesome. Next one. Is this toolkit only for Vaadin 7 and 8, or is it also possible to use it with other versions in between, like Vaadin 14, for instance?
Okay. This does not work with Vaadin 14, so that is a different kind of solution. We actually have something for Vaadin 14. I'm pretty sure we have some tools and utilities that you can use for Vaadin 14, but it's not the MTK. I think the thing with Vaadin 14 is that there can often be a lot of was a polymer templates, I think is the issue. So polymer templates are things that you might need to convert if you're trying to move off of Vaadin 14, and that's text, so that's not Java. So the Dragonfly tool is really just for doing lots of Java refactoring. And yeah, there's not that much Java refactoring, I think, involved with from an upgrade from Vaadin 14. But in any case, it's not in this product. That would be something else. I'm very sure that my colleagues in the flow department are working on some utility. I know there's a utility somewhere on our website, but I just don't know where that is at the moment.
Yeah, this is actually a great question and a conversation starter for the forum. So let's continue this conversation on forum, and you can just go and create your own topic for this conversation. And I'm glad that I asked this question because I didn't fully, or yeah, I didn't provide too great answer in the chat when I tried. So now we have the official answer from Ben. But going from say Vaadin 14, it should be a fairly straightforward and well documented experience, especially for the 23 version, and from there to 24 should be also fairly straightforward.
Yes, certainly if you compare with Vaadin 7.
Yes, exactly. Cool. All right. If a Vaadin 7 application is upgraded to use the new feature pack, how hard would it then be to upgrade to native Vaadin 24 flow?
Well, you would still have the issue of the data binding, right? So data binding would still need to be solved. And I think the major issue there is that the direction of control, I think, is just inverted from between Vaadin 7 and Vaadin flow. So in Vaadin 7, the component is controlling much more the conversion and the validation, and in Vaadin flow, the data binder is doing that much more. So it's like just the opposite direction. And that could be a really big architectural change that you need to go through. But this is something that you could do gradually, of course. If you have, if your application has been set up so that you can easily go through your application screen by screen, then you could get everything into flow pretty fast with the with MTK, and then gradually remove your dependencies on the feature pack if that is urgent for you.
Great. All right. Then we've got a question regarding converting a V7 app to V24 using MTK. If we want to add new features to the converted app on the same page, can we use V24 field and converted Webpack V7 fields?
Yeah, you would just need to take care about the data binding. So I think the issue there would be, do you want to have a unified data binding for that whole view? And if so, then yeah, you might need to be making more changes. But otherwise, if it's not a unified data binding that you have for all components on the screen, then yeah, there's no problem with that.
Okay, thanks. If we have a Vaadin project running Java 11, does it mean I cannot run the migration to Vaadin 24 as it requires Java 17? Is this correct?
Yeah, that's what the option is to. I mean, that's why we have an option to go to Vaadin 23. It really is to support companies in your situation where you're limited and you're not able to go to Java 17 yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right.
Then so as I said, just a reminder then, yeah, you would need to contact Vaadin to get some help there, because you would need a custom configuration to go to Vaadin 23. If you wanted to automate the transformation to Vaadin 23, then you would need a custom configuration of the Dragonfly tool. It's not very difficult to make one, but we would just need to generate one for you, because we tried to make it as simple as possible, so that it would just be one click. But obviously, if you're just doing one click, it's all going to Vaadin 24.
Okay. Could you quickly elaborate on which version of Eclipse you were using with the Vaadin plugin?
Oh, I'm just taking the latest. Hang on, let's see. I can tell you which ones that I'm using. 24.06 and
24.06.
I think the one that I used that still works with Dragonfly was 2022.03. I believe that, but I mean, I would always recommend just take the latest Eclipse.
Yeah, to be on the safe side.
It's a free download.
Yep. Cool. Alrighty. JPA containers supported for data binding, yes or no?
Not yet. We've got lazy query. JPA, I know people, I know lots of organizations have used that, and it was a very popular component. So I would need to see. I mean, to be honest, we haven't looked at that. This wasn't one of the things that really stood out. But I can take a look. I'll take notice of that, because it really is what people who are interested in the product. If they're saying that they're using JPA, then if it's easy for us to make, then yeah, there's no reason why we couldn't squeeze it in Vaadin 24.8 in June.
Cool. Alrighty. We actually do have quite a few questions now in the pipeline. I think we are not able to address all of these. In case we are not, then we'll answer the questions in the forum. But let's see how many of these we can go through in 1 minute. So what happens with our custom SCSS files we use to style V7 apps?
But these are not changed. So yeah, Dragonfly is only changing the the Java files. That's really the only thing that Dragonfly is doing. The rest, your pom.xml and your SCSS, you would need to change these. And yeah, best thing would be to go to CSS3. I think if you're going to Vaadin 24. But yeah, the latest components are really flow components. Right? So the Vaadin 7 components, we made them so that they are actually subclasses of the regular Vaadin flow components. So you would be styling them the way that you would be styling a flow component. So that's kind of an apple that you'll have to bite through. That's some work that you just need to do to get your styles right.
Got it. Tree grid supported. Yes or no?
That wasn't one of them. No, that was not one of them. So we have table. Oh wait, right. But we're talking about Vaadin 7, right? So that should be tree table, I think, right? I don't think the tree is in there. Tree. We didn't get to the tree. Sorry.
Got it. Do we have any tools which helps to do migration from Vaadin 7 to Vaadin 24? And do we have this recording shared with who wants to revisit again? The recording will be sent out to all of the participants after this session. And 7 to 24, I think we briefly covered that one already.
Yeah, so absolutely 7 to 24. That's the default. That's what this whole seminar was about, a webinar was about. Sorry.
Will MPR continue to support V7 and V24 running together?
Yeah, nothing's changed to MPR as far as I'm aware. There were some concerns about Jakarta namespaces and things changing with Java, but they solved those. To my knowledge, MPR just continues. It's a very popular product. People seem to like using it. So nothing changes with that.
All righty. Thanks, Ben. We still do have a few questions here left, but I think we can address these individually, either offline or online in the forum. And yeah, thank you so much, Ben, for being available for this webinar. I think it was really awesome stuff here. Lots of very informative stuff that we went through. And yeah, any last words you want to share, Ben?
No, thank you very much.
All righty. Thank you all. Till the next time. Have a great day. Bye.